One of the chief architects of the Genesis sound was a man who barely played with the band before disappearing for many years, only played on 2 albums. But just when it seemed like he may have disappeared from the music scene, he returned in the late 70s to become one of the leading architects of adult-oriented art pop. Yes, I am talking about Anthony Phillips, and from the 1978 Rupert Hine produced album Wise After the Event, the track Now What?
I dreamed I was not in sheltered leads I lay, then I heard a sound I feared, and then I saw their coats all smeared in blood. I knew my fate.
Okay, I dreamed I was an otter, in sheltered leats I lay, then I heard a sound I feared, and then I saw their coats all smeared in blood. I knew my fate, nowhere to hide. So he's speaking from the point of view of animals that are being hunted.
Nowhere to hide. I dreamed I was a red stag in pastures grazing. Then I heard a hunting horn ringing out its song, song of death we know so well. How can I tell?
I dreamed I was a red stag in pastures grazing, and then I heard a hunting horn ringing out its song, the song of death we know so well. How can I tell? Yeah, keeping on the theme. So the track Now What is co-titled Are They Doing to My Little Friends? So the omniscient narrator who's having all these dreams is like the supreme force, I guess, who created all these creatures, and now he's watching them being killed. Or it could just be like a from the point of view of a conservationist who, cares, who's involved in the care of endangered species and just animals in general, from hunting, poaching.
I am the sun, I am the moon, I am the stars up above. Now what are they doing to my little friends? I'll make everything and it all dies in the end.
Now, the chorus is what has me thinking that he's singing from the point of view of an omniscient supreme being. Because he says, for I am the sun, I am the moon, I am the stars up above. So he's speaking from the point of view of someone who made it all. Now, what are they doing to my little friends? I make everything, and it all dies in the end, huh? So the supreme being of this song is responsible for life, but not responsible for death. It seems as though death wasn't part of the natural plan here. I love this lengthy post-chorus symphonic interlude that slowly takes things back into the verses. It like has that B to E structure, and then slightly, with the plucking, and then it rises to C for those long sustained notes with the simmering, like polyphonic synth, kind of mellotron sounding synthesizer. Right there.
I dreamed I was a big bear, bespectacled and brown. Then I saw two shafts of fire shooting through the sky. Safe drops of rain I cannot explain.
I dreamed I was a big bear, bespectacled and brown, and then I saw two shafts of fire shooting through the sky. I heard no more. Safe drops of rain I cannot explain. Yeah, some of this seems to, as though it could tie in with the cover art. So that's a little creature. He had a very unique, the first three album covers of his, or perhaps more, perhaps even the first three like main albums he did. The Geese and the Ghost, Wise After the Event and Sides, and then I guess some of the Private Parts and Pieces franchise were done by Peter Cross, who has a very unique, like, critter-laden type of art style. Like Wise After the Event, it has that fisheye perspective, but all these little critters with human-like, like rodents and such with human-like sensibilities, and doing very surreal activities. Analogy time. He's basically kind of like the Roger Dean of. He is to Anthony Phillips. Peter Cross was to Anthony Phillips what Kim Poor was to her husband Steve Hackett, and what Paul Whitehead was to Genesis, and what Roger Dean was to Yes. You could say.
I dreamed I was a gray seal. My cups were settling, and then they came with sticks and clubs and beat away my brains. I heard no more save children's cries, helpless to die.
I love the way that he's singing these words. It's just so restrained. It's almost like it's kind of lucid, and the way that he stretches out certain vowels and hits these, goes into these real low octaves, and just, it's so like gentle and yet assured.
For I am the sun, I am the moon, I am the stars above. Now what are they doing tonight? Don't make
Okay, we go through that chorus again. For I am the sun, I am the moon, I am the stars up above. I've also got a comment on the structure of the verses that we've heard so far. The way it begins in that real plaintive, like C, dun, 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 like with the rising, falling second, like kind of like a hammer on, like it's in C, but there's this D, this like hammer on D on the first, note, and then dun, no, 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 like that, giving it sort of like a suspension release throughout the chorus. That And let's see here. Guitar, of course, is played by Anthony Phillips. That's the instrument that he had spent so long mastering here. And vocals, bass by John G. Perry, who was in Aviator around this time and had done brief stints in Camel and, or no, Caravan and Curved Air, and he was in Quantum Jump with producer Rupert Hine, and he was in the band Gringo, who did one album in 1971 it also had future Sailor member Grant Serpell, or was it Henry Marsh? Let's see. It was Henry Marsh. Yeah, Grant Serpell was in Affinity. Yeah, every single member of Sailor had a pre-Sailor notable like recording past. Funny enough, the guitars on this and keyboards are credited to the Vicar, and when you, the Anthony Phillips' alias here. Drums by Michael Giles. Okay, we know where he comes from. Oboe by Robin Phillips. Funny enough, I hadn't looked closely enough at the credits before you noticed that. I'm, as one could guess, the brother of Anthony. So that's interesting. Both Anthony Phillips and his successor in Genesis, Steve Hackett, both brought their brothers into the fold. This is actually pretty lean for such a full-sounding album. It seems like we've only got 1, 2, 3. Four. We've only got like 3 instrumentalists on here, because I don't know how often we hear the oboe. Oh, on this track we've got Harp by Jeremy Gilbert. Let's see what. Oh, not a lot of credits on Discogs. Plays on a few other Anthony Phillips albums and plays on a Nick Turner album. Rupert Hine knew how to make really full sounds out of just really small, compact 4-piece, 5-piece, or in this case 3-piece. Around the same time, he was also producing Scottish 3-piece Cafe Jakes, 2 excellent albums by them. And they have a very full, lavish sound for a trio, I guess in large part thanks to Rupert Hine and his production magic. Notice how those rising, simmering synthesizers, how they'll like accent one set of bars they'll like accent like the first 2 of like a 4-bar sustain, and then on the second one they'll be kind of subdued on the first 2 bars, and then rise up in the second, in the third and fourth, as the piano kind of like almost like fades in and out.
The night is quiet, peaceful hopes they lie. There is no peace for anyone, whilst this past remains, his senseless mind cannot retain. I cannot explain.
Okay. Let's see. The night is quiet for otters. In peaceful halts they lie. There is no peace for anyone, while this pest remains, his senseless mind cannot retain. I cannot explain. So he's, once again, lamenting the predatorial facts of nature. It's almost kind of like something that this creator didn't plan. I love how he changes the chorus slightly. Like he had been saying, and it all dies in the end, and this time he says, but it just dies in the end. A slight kind of different emphasis. And right here, the harp of Jeremy Gilbert is really taking center stage almost. It is, undoubtedly. Now, what is that sound? Is that like, it sounds like mallets over piano strings, over the strings on an open grand piano. Notice how that shimmery dark reverb just kind of sonically envelopes the track towards the end. It just slowly comes in and just grabs everything. Those as the open cadence and just quiet, tinkly lushness of it all. Like, well, the little details going on under those sustained vocals and sustained synths and everything. Very grandiose. I always pictured in that final part of the song. Anthony Phillips. I always visualize this video in which a lot of the action that's being depicted actually takes place in a snow cone representing Earth, with Anthony Phillips, the omniscient narrator. And you would pan into the snow cone, into the globe of the snow cone for the scenes being depicted, and then you would pan out of it, and it would all be seen as a snow cone with Anthony Phillips looking just kind of like laying by its side, just kind of his head, like with his head just sort of on the table toward the end, kind of almost watching it sideways, almost in despair. Which just, that with those 70s like Super 8 grainy film quality and just light, like you know, with the glowing lights kind of, and then it panning between like a close-up of him and then kind of panning away from him into this like glowing light as that reverb overtakes everything. Yeah. 26 years on from when I first heard this track, and people were talking about conservation back then. They were talking about endangered species and concerns that like poaching, you know, waste we're having on wildlife. And today we're still talking about those things. So this track has a timeless message. Whether Anthony Phillips was singing from the point of view of an omniscient creator of life, or simply from the point of view of someone who cares about animals, cares about marine life, cares about wildlife. And that was Anthony Phillips. Now, What Are They Doing to My Little Friends, from the 1978 album Wise After the Event. His second album after leaving Genesis, although he had actually left Genesis back in 1970. He just simply wouldn't release his first solo album until 1977 because he had spent the intervening years mastering his skill sets on guitar, piano, and such. And as a matter of fact, the reason why there were so many private parts and pieces initially is because a lot of that material was recorded in the years where he was missing from the music scene. And the amazing thing is that he returned after so long with just so much inspiration that he would put out all these albums in quick succession. Like he puts out his first album in 1977, and by the end of the decade, he's already got 4 albums out. And so, and I never knew that the recording was so lean, only consisted of just a few people. I've had this on vinyl. And yeah, you would almost think that 12 or 16 people were involved, but that goes to show just what an amazing producer Rupert Hine was, who around the same time that he was doing this, he produced 2 albums for Scottish adult art pop trio Cafe Jakes. He produced 2 albums with Quantum Jump, 76, 77, although Quantum Jump would eventually have their big come up in like the following year. After they disbanded, one of their songs would become a hit, and they had to get back out and promote it a bit. And he would also, in around this time, become involved with Saga. That may have begun a few years later. I can't remember how many albums of. I know he produced their Worlds Apart. I don't know if any of the earlier ones. So. And of course, in the early '80s. He would launch the second part of his solo career, starting with Immunity. He had done solo material earlier in the 70s, a few kind of quirky singer-songwriter albums, and then he would reinvent himself in more of like a modern art rock, like high-tech, studio-based art rock vein, a la Peter Gabriel, or what Peter Hamill was doing during the early 80s. And he would also be the production mastermind behind The Fix, almost become their fifth wheel in the studio. One person once remarked that The Fix were kind of a pretty boy front for his ideas that took his his music, his sound, and vision to a wider audience. The first Fix album, though, is really quite great, and fits really in with the with what Rupert Hine was doing solo-wise during that time of Unity. Oh, anyway, yeah, not the wildest wish to fly, but anyway, those are all topics for future videos. And until then, for more Rubies and Sapphires from Anthony Phillips, see the directory of albums by English A artists linked below. And until next time, like and subscribe. This is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled tri-maximalist, signing off.